Hello, beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection to your beautiful team of angels who love you so. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I also am someone who listens to sleep podcasts. And so this program blends together two of my ongoing self-care tools in my toolbox. Connecting with the angels absolutely brightens my life. And listening to sleep podcasts helps me get a good night's sleep. So I knew for a while that I wanted to do a sleep podcast, but for me the magic really came in when I found this way to weave in the angels too, because this is a snapshot of what I use to help me find balance in my day-to-day life. And my hope is this will serve you in a similar way. And you are welcome to use this podcast as you drift off to sleep. That's how I use it. And yes, I actually listen to my own podcast because it helps me. Some of you will have heard me talk about the way I experience my own consciousness. It's almost a duality of sorts. There is the Earth Girl, which is the me who, is that good grammar to say the me who? Probably not, but I'm going to let it go. The aspect of myself that gets annoyed with people at Costco and gets overwhelmed and has a very, very human experience of the world. And then there is the practitioner self. And that's the aspect of myself that I experience when I am doing angel sessions and classes and moments like this one when I am intentionally helping to co-create a loving, soothing, sacred space for you. So in this moment, I'm in practitioner mode. The lovely thing is, when I get ready for bed, I am most definitely in Earth Girl mode, and I plug in the podcast, and it helps me. The vibration, the energy, the rhythm, the loving, even though I am in part the instrument through which it flowed to be created, when I'm in my Earth Girl mode, I experience it similarly to how you do. I receive it because in this moment the energy and the love of the angels is flowing through for us all. It is here for me and it is here for you. So take a nice deep breath in if you are so guided to do so, and release. And whether you're listening to this during the daytime to help infuse some good angelic energy into your day, or whether you're listening to it when you sleep, the angels are with you. And the angels are always with you. It's just that we're not always aware of it, that the relationship is designed to be subtle. So subtle, most of us do not know that it even exists. But moments like this one amplify our awareness of the angels. And so it becomes easier to connect with their energy and their love. And that's why I'm here, to help amplify your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. As a practitioner, I'm often asked if I can see people's angels or tell them their names or how many angels they have. I think as human beings, we really like the details. And let me tell you, it would be super cool if I could do that for you. But that's not really how I perceive or experience the angels. When I first started my work with illuminating souls, I was guided to use the title Channel for the Angelic Realms. I don't use that so much anymore. I more say I'm an angelic practitioner. I don't know that it really matters what I call myself at this point. But Channel for the Angelic Realms really felt appropriate because that's how I experience what I do. I channel the vibration, the essence, the wisdom, and the love of the angelic realms, which means I tend not to discern individuals. The only time this really shifts is when I'm channeling and Josephus and the Wisdom Council come through. For those of you who have experienced that, you'll know that Josephus is the primary guide of the group. And when he comes through, he speaks in the we, he speaks in the plural, because he is bringing forward wisdom from the collective. And in the case of the work that I do, the collective is mutable, meaning it may shift and change depending on who I'm working with. So if I'm facilitating a session for you, often your team of angels is in the council. They're in the gallery, and they are helping me to bring forward messages for you. And they're also helping to amplify the messages you receive through your own consciousness. It is a wonderful blessing to be able to facilitate the angelic energy for you. And I also receive it at the same time. So as we sit here together, this energy, this light, this love, this compassion is flowing through for you. And not all of us receive the exact same experience. It's almost as if we all go to a museum and we're all looking at the same painting. And we get together later and we talk about what we experienced in the painting. We will all have experienced something slightly different because each of us is a unique instrument. And absolutely there can be overlap, and we can reflect to each other and then enhance our experiences. But just like a museum painting, this energy in this podcast, you will receive uniquely through your perception filter. And the angels, your angels, are calibrating this energy for you. They are aware of what is going on in your life. They're aware of your victories and your wins, and they're aware of your challenges and your grief. They're aware of all of it, so they can help modulate this energy in support of you. And you need not be aware that this is even happening. You can sleep right through it. You know, only a part of our beingness is conscious. There is a significant part of our beingness that is superconscious or subconscious. So the part of you that identifies as the waking self is only a part of you. So when that part goes to sleep, you are still present, but in a different way, in a shifted way. And our sleep time is a wonderful time to heal and learn in the astral realm. We are ever evolving beings, and we are always presented with opportunities to heal and to grow. But it doesn't have to require a lot of efforting on your part. It is our nature to evolve and grow, as is everything in this universe. It's an ever-expanding universe. So I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and out, just exhaling anything you do not wish to carry into the next moment. And I'm going to call in the angels to be here with you, to be here with us. And so, beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here, and I know you are already here. And we are so deeply grateful for this opportunity to be present and to remember the divine love that is here with us now, that is here with us always. And angels, there is so much transpiring in the world right now, and please help us to cultivate a buffer of light to help clear our energy fields through the heart of God, so that we can come into a place of balance, of authentic empowerment, a place of inspiration, so that we can be very on purpose with how we use our life force here in this world. Dear ones, just take a nice deep breath in and let it out. And I just feel this very sweet energy coming in from the angels. You know, this may seem like a little bit of an odd teaching, but it's what the angels are showing me. So it is early morning here in the Bay Area, and it's very gloomy and overcast, which is not unusual for this time of year. During the month of June, we call it June gloom, and a typical morning here can be that it is overcast in the morning, and it can feel kind of gloomy. If you're from another climate, it would seem like, oh, this is going to be a rainy day, but it doesn't rain here in July most of the time. And at some point over the next few hours, the fog, the gloom is going to burn off, and we are going to have bright blue skies. And quite often this gloomy weather or this foggy weather really serves as a metaphor. Because for many of us, the gray gloom can impact our moods. I mean, it's a great invitation to cozy up for sure. When the weather's like this, I just want to curl up. I don't want to do anything. My energy is low. versus the mornings when the sky is bright blue and it's like the world is saying, come on, girl, let's go. So here's the reminder, though, why I'm sharing this with you. When we are in the fog, it can seem like all there is the fog, that the fog is the truth. The fog is only a temporary truth, though, because behind the fog is a blue sky. Always this is true. That if you go up high enough in the atmosphere, the sky is blue, at least from this planet, from this vantage point. That is the truth. And life can be like this, that we wake up or we go about our day feeling like we're in the gloom because things are heavy and difficult and sad. And it's not that that's untrue, right? Right now, the sky looks gloomy. But the metaphor here is that the light is always shining for you and for me too. Whether we can see it or perceive it or not, the light is constant. The light is a fixed position that you can rely on, even when you cannot see it or feel it. It is there for you, as is the love of your angels. You know, sometimes we get in our own way and we get in our own stuff, and it doesn't feel like the angels are there. They're not listening. Can't feel the love. I'm all alone down here. But it's always there. It's just sometimes the gloom and the fog obscure it. So take a deep breath in. And just imagine, if you will, I've used this metaphor with you before, that you're just soaring, flying in your astral body, if you will, through the cloud cover, up into the clear sky. In your sky, if it's nighttime, it might be a starlit sky that is just magnificent. Or it might be a bright blue sky that brings you joy. That this light is a constant, an eternal flame, if you will, always guiding you, always here to bring to you direction, compassion, healing, and love. So it's okay if you don't feel the angels all the time. It doesn't mean they're gone. It just might be that your perception filter is seeing the fog or the gloom. And just so you know, when that happens, the angels are shining even more brightly upon you. So let yourself receive their love. They love you so much. They have known you since before you were born. They know your reasons for this incarnation. They acknowledge you for your courage to even be born into this dimension, in this time and space. They adore your quirkiness. They love your compassion and your heart. They love everything about you. So just receive this love and allow yourself to be held gently in the heart of God. Again, just taking a few nice deep breaths in and out, allowing your body to relax, sending some of this love to your body temple I know that having a body is not always the easiest journey. So let's breathe some of that love into our bodies right now, letting our bodies know that they are loved, letting your body receive this love, letting your body receive waves of forgiveness and healing and light. Take another nice deep breath in as the angels bring you waves of comfort and also seeds of inspiration. And you need not know what these are yet, but I affirm they will germinate and blossom soon within your spirit. For now, I invite you to rest, cozy on up, and snuggle on in. And while you do, I'm going to read you a story. Tonight, we're going to return to Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I will be honest, I have forgotten what part we're on, but in the last episode where we read from Little Women, Jo and Amy have just reconciled from their huge fight. Amy burned Jo's journal, and Jo was never going to forgive her until Amy fell through the ice while skating, and then they forgave each other and made up. Now we're going into a part of the story where Meg goes to Vanity Fair. And the thing to remember going into this part of the story is the Marches are not a wealthy family. They're wealthy in love, but their father is a pastor and is off serving in the army. The two older girls, Jo and Meg, both work, so Meg serves as a governess and Jo takes care of old Aunt March. And their mom, Marmee, also helps take care of people in the community. So that sort of sets the stage for where we are, and Meg is about to go on a journey. So this is chapter 9, Meg Goes to Vanity Fair. I do think it was the most fortunate thing in the world that those children should have the measles just now, said Meg one April day as she stood packing the go-abroady trunk in her room, surrounded by her sisters. And so nice of Annie Moffat not to forget her promise. A whole fortnight of fun will be regularly splendid, replied Jo, looking like a windmill as she folded skirts with her long arms. And such lovely weather. I'm so glad of that, added Beth, tidily sorting neck and hair ribbons in her best box, lunch for the great occasion. I wish I was going to have a fine time and wear all these nice things, said Amy with her mouth full of pins, as she artistically replenished her sister's cushion. I wish you were all going, but you can't. I shall keep my adventures to tell you when I come back. I'm sure it's the least I can do when you have been so kind, lending me things and helping me get ready, said Meg, glancing round the room at the very simple outfit, which seemed nearly perfect in their eyes. What did Mother give you out of the treasure box? Asked Amy, who had not been present at the opening of a certain cedar chest in which Mrs. March kept a few relics of past splendor as gifts for her girls when the proper time came. A pair of silk stockings, that pretty carved fan, and a lovely blue sash. I wanted the violet silk, but there isn't time to make it over, so I must be contented with my old tarlatan. It will look nice over my new muslin skirt, and the sash will set it off beautifully. I wish I hadn't smashed my coral bracelet, for you might have had it, said Joe, who loved to give and lend, but whose possessions were usually too dilapidated to be of much use. There's a lovely old-fashioned pearl set in the treasure chest, but Mother said real flowers were the prettiest ornament for a young girl, and Laurie promised to send me all I want, replied Meg. Now let me see. There's my new gray walking suit. Just curl up the feather in my hat, Beth. Then my poplin for Sunday, and the small party. It looks heavy for spring, doesn't it? The violet silk would be so nice, oh dear. Never mind, you've got the tarlatan for the big party, and you always look like an angel in white, said Amy, brooding over the little store of finery in which her soul delighted. It isn't low-necked, and it doesn't sweep enough, but it will have to do. My blue house dress looks so well turned and freshly trimmed that I feel as if I've gotten a new one. My silk isn't a bit the fashion, and my bonnet doesn't look like Sally's. I didn't like to say anything, but I was sadly disappointed in my umbrella. I told Mother black with a white handle, but she forgot and brought a green one with a yellowish handle. It's strong and neat, so I ought not to complain, but I know I shall feel ashamed of it beside Annie's silk one, with a gold top, sighed Meg, surveying her little umbrella with great disfavor. Change it, advised Joe. I won't be so silly or hurt Mommy's feelings when she took so much pains to get my things. It's a nonsensical notion of mine, and I'm not going to give up to it. My silk stockings and 2 pairs of new gloves are my comfort. You are a dear to lend me yours, Joe. I feel so rich and sort of elegant with 2 new pairs, and the old ones cleaned up for common. And Meg took a refreshing peep at her glove box. Annie Moffat has blue and pink bows on her nightcaps. Would you put some on mine? She asked as Beth brought up a pile of snowy muslins, fresh from Hannah's hands. No, I wouldn't, for the smart caps won't match the plain gowns without any trimming on them. Poor folks shouldn't rig, said Joe decidedly. I wonder if I shall ever be happy enough to have real lace on my clothes and bows on my caps, said Meg impatiently. You said the other day that you'd be perfectly happy if you could only go to Annie Moffat's, observed Beth in her quiet way. So I did. Well, I am happy and I won't fret. But it does seem as if the more one gets, the more one wants, doesn't it? There now, the trays are ready and everything in but the ball dress, which I shall leave for Mother to pack, said Meg, cheering up as she glanced from the half-filled trunk to the many times pressed and mended white tarlatan, which she called her ball dress, with an important air. The next day was fine, and Meg departed in style for a fortnight of novelty and pleasure. Mrs. March had consented to the visit rather reluctantly, fearing that Margaret would come back more discontented than she went. But she begged so hard, and Sally had promised to take good care of her, and a little pleasure seemed so delightful after a winter of irksome work that the mother yielded, and the daughter went to take her first taste of fashionable life. The Moffats were very fashionable, and simple Meg was rather daunted at first by the splendor of the house and the elegance of its occupants. But they were kindly people, in spite of the frivolous life they led, and soon put their guest at her ease. Perhaps Meg felt, without understanding why, that they were not particularly cultivated or intelligent people, and that all their gilding could not quite conceal the ordinary material of which they were made. It certainly was agreeable to fare sumptuously, drive in a fine carriage, wear her best frock every day, and do nothing but enjoy herself. It suited her exactly, and soon she began to imitate the manners and conversation of those about her, to put on little airs and graces, use French phrases, crimp her hair, take in her dresses, and talk about the fashions as well as she could. The more she saw of Annie Moffat's pretty things, the more she envied her and sighed to be rich. Home now looked bare and dismal as she thought of it. Work grew harder than ever, and she felt that she was a very destitute and much injured girl, in spite of the new gloves and silk stockings. She had not much time for repinning, however, for the 3 young girls were busily employed in having a good time. They shopped, walked, rode, and called all day, went to theaters and operas, or frolicked at home in the evening, for Annie had many friends and knew how to entertain them. Her older sisters were very fine young ladies, and one was engaged, which was extremely interesting and romantic, Meg thought. Mr. Moffat was a fat, jolly old gentleman who knew her father, and Mrs. Moffat a fat, jolly old lady who took a great fancy to Meg as her daughter had done. Everyone petted her, and Daisy, as they called her, was in a fair way to have her head turned. When the evening for the small party came, she found that the poplin wouldn't do at all, for the other girls were putting on thin dresses and making themselves very fine indeed. So out came the tarletan, looking older, limper, and shabbier than ever beside Sally's crisp new one. Meg saw the girls glance at it and then at one another, and her cheeks began to burn, for with all her gentleness she was very proud. No one said a word about it, but Sally offered to dress her hair, and Annie to tie her sash, and Belle, the engaged sister, praised her white arms. But in their kindness Meg saw only pity for her poverty, and her heart felt very heavy as she stood by herself, while the others laughed and chattered and flew about like gauzy butterflies. The hard, bitter feeling was getting pretty bad when the maid brought in a box of flowers. Before she could speak, Annie had the cover off, and all were exclaiming at the lovely roses, heath, and fern within. "It's for Belle, of course. George always sends her some. But these are altogether ravishing," cried Annie with a great sniff. "They are for Miss March," the man said. "And here's a note," put in the maid, holding it to Meg. "What fun! Who are they from?" "Didn't know you had a lover," cried the girls, fluttering about Meg in a high state of curiosity and surprise. "The note is from Mother and the flowers from Laurie," said Meg simply, yet much gratified that he had not forgotten her. "Oh, indeed," said Annie with a funny look as Meg slipped the note into her pocket as a sort of talisman against envy, vanity, and false pride. For the few loving words had done her good, and the flowers cheered her up by their beauty. Feeling almost happy again, she laid a few ferns and roses for herself, and quickly made up the rest in dainty bouquets for the breasts, hair, or skirts of her friends, offering them so prettily that Clara, the elder sister, told her she was the sweetest little thing she ever saw, and they looked quite charmed with her small attention. Somehow the kind act finished her despondency, and when all the rest went to show themselves to Mrs. Moffat, she saw a happy, bright-eyed face in the mirror as she laid her ferns against the rippling hair and fastened the roses in the dress that didn't strike her as so very shabby now. She enjoyed herself very much that evening. for she danced to her heart's content. Everyone was very kind, and she had 3 compliments. Annie made her sing, and someone said she had a remarkably fine voice. Major Lincoln asked who the fresh little girl with the beautiful eyes was, and Mr. Moffat insisted on dancing with her because she didn't dawdle, but had some great spring in her, as he gracefully expressed it. So altogether she had a very nice time till she overheard a bit of conversation which disturbed her extremely. She was sitting just inside the conservatory waiting for her partner to bring her an ice, when she heard a voice ask on the other side of the flowery wall, "How old is he?" 16 or 17, I should say," replied another voice. "It would be a grand thing for one of those girls, wouldn't it? Sally says they are very intimate now, and the old man quite dotes on them. Mrs. M. has made her plans, I dare say, and will play her cards well, early as it is. The girl evidently doesn't think of it yet," said Mrs. Moffat. "She told that fib about her mamma as if she did know, and colored up when the flowers came quite prettily. Poor thing. She'd be so nice if she was only got up in style." "Do you think she'd be offended if we offered to lend her a dress for Thursday?" asked another voice. "She's proud, but I don't believe she'd mind, for that dowdy tarlatan is all she's got. She may tear it tonight, and that will be a good excuse for offering a decent one." Here Meg's partner appeared, to find her looking much flushed and rather agitated. She was proud, and her pride was useful just then, for it helped her to hide her mortification, anger, and disgust at what she had just heard. For innocent and unsuspicious as she was, she could not help understanding the gossip of her friends. She tried to forget it, but could not, and kept repeating to herself, "Mrs. M. has made her plans. That fib about her mamma, and dowdy tarlatan," till she was ready to cry and rush home to tell her troubles and ask for advice. As that was impossible, she did her best to seem gay, and being rather excited, she succeeded so well that no one dreamed what an effort she was making. She was very glad when it was all over, and she was quiet in her bed where she could think and wonder and fume, till her head ached and her hot cheeks were cooled by a few natural tears. Those foolish yet well-meant words had opened a new world to Meg, and much disturbed the peace of the old one, in which till now she had lived as happily as a child. Her innocent friendship with Laurie was spoiled by the silly speeches she had overheard. Her faith in her mother was a little shaken by the worldly plans attributed to her by Mrs. Moffat, who judged others by herself. And the sensible resolution to be contented with the simple wardrobe, which suited a poor man's daughter, was weakened by the unnecessary pity of girls who thought a shabby dress one of the greatest calamities under heaven. Poor Meg had a restless night and got up heavy-eyed, unhappy, half resentful towards her friends, and half ashamed of herself for not speaking out frankly and setting everything right. Everybody dawdled that morning, and it was noon before the girls found energy enough even to take up their worsted work. Something in the manner of her friends struck Meg at once. They treated her with more respect, she thought, took quite a tender interest in what she said, and looked at her with eyes that plainly betrayed curiosity. All this surprised and flattered her, though she did not understand it till Miss Bell looked up from her writing and said with a sentimental air, "Daisy, dear, I've sent an invitation to your friend Mr. Lawrence for Thursday. We should like to know him, and it's only a proper compliment to you." Meg colored, but mischievous fancy to tease the girls made her reply demurely, You are very kind, but I'm afraid he won't come." "Why not, Cherie?" asked Miss Bell. "He's too old." "My child, what do you mean? What is his age? I beg to know," cried Miss Clara. "Nearly 70, I believe," answered Meg, counting stitches to hide the merriment in her eyes. "You sly creature, of course we meant the young man," explained Miss Bell, laughing. "There isn't any. Laurie is only a little boy," and Meg laughed also at the queer look which the sisters exchanged as she thus described her supposed lover. "About your age," Nan said. "Nearer my sister Jo's. I'm 17 in August," returned Meg, tossing her head. "It's very nice of him to send you flowers, isn't it?" said Annie, looking wise about nothing. "Yes, he often does, to all of us, for their house is full and we are so fond of them. My mother and old Mr. Lawrence are friends, you know, so it is quite natural that we children should play together," and Meg hoped they would say no more. "It's evident Daisy isn't out yet," said Miss Clara to Belle with a nod. "Quite a pastoral state of innocence all round," returned Miss Bell with a shrug. "I'm going out to get some little matters for my girls. Can I do anything for you young ladies?" asked Mrs. Moffat, lumbering in like an elephant in silk and lace. "No, thank you, ma'am," replied Sally. "I've got my new pink silk for Thursday and I don't want a thing." "Nor I," began Meg, but stopped because it occurred to her that she did want several things and could not have them. "What shall you wear?" asked Sally. "My old white one again, if I can mend it fit to be seen. It got sadly torn last night," said Meg, trying to speak quite easily but feeling very uncomfortable. "Why don't you send home for another?" said Sally, who was not an observing young lady. "I haven't got any other." It cost Meg an effort to say that, but Sally did not see it and exclaimed in amiable surprise, "Only that? How funny." She did not finish her speech, for Belle shook her head at her and broke in, kindly saying, "Not at all. Where is the use of having a lot of dresses when she isn't out yet? There's no need of sending home Daisy, even if you had a dozen, for I've got a sweet blue silk laid away which I've outgrown, and you shall wear it to please me, won't you, dear?" "You are very kind, but I don't mind my old dress if you don't. It does well enough for a little girl like me," said Meg. "Now do let me please myself by dressing you up in style. I admire to do it, and you'd be a regular little beauty with a touch here and there. I shan't let anyone see you until you're done, and then we'll burst upon them like Cinderella and her godmother going to the ball," said Belle in her persuasive tone. Meg couldn't refuse the offer so kindly made, for a desire to see if she would be a little beauty after touching up caused her to accept and forget all her former uncomfortable feelings towards the Moffats. On the Thursday evening, Belle shut herself up with her maid, and between them they turned Meg into a fine lady. They crimped and curled her hair, they polished her neck and arms with some fragrant powder, touched her lips with a coralline salve to make them redder, and Hortense would have added a soupçon of rouge if Meg had not rebelled. They laced her into a sky-blue dress which was so tight she could hardly breathe, and so low in the neck that modest Meg blushed at herself in the mirror. A set of silver filigree was added, bracelets, necklace, brooch, and even earrings, for Hortense tied them on with a bit of pink silk which did not show. A cluster of tea rose buds at the bosom, and a ruche reconciled Meg to the display of her pretty white shoulders, and a pair of high-heeled silk boots satisfied the last wish of her heart. A lace handkerchief, a plumy fan, and a bouquet in a shoulder holder finished her off, and Miss Bell surveyed her with the satisfaction of a little girl with a newly dressed doll. "Mademoiselle is charming, très jolie, is she not?" cried Hortense, clasping her hands in affected rapture. "Come and show yourself," said Miss Bell, leading the way to the room where the others were waiting. As Meg went rustling after with her long skirts trailing, her ears tinkling, her curls waving, and her heart beating, she felt as if her fun had really begun at last, for the mirror had plainly told her that she was a little beauty. Her friends repeated the pleasing phrase enthusiastically, and for several minutes she stood like a jackdaw in the fable, enjoying her borrowed plumes, while the rest chattered like a party of magpies. "While I dress her, do you drill her, Nan, in the management of her skirt and those French heels, or she will trip herself up. Take your silver butterfly and catch up that long curl on the left side of her head, Clara. And don't any of you disturb the charming work of my hands," said Belle, as she hurried away, looking very pleased with her success. "You don't look a bit like yourself, but you are very nice. I'm nowhere beside you, for Belle has heaps of taste, and you're quite French, I assure you. Let your flowers hang. Don't be so careful of them, and be sure you don't trip," returned Sally, trying not to care that Meg was prettier than herself. Keeping that warning carefully in mind, Margaret got safely downstairs and sailed into the drawing rooms, where the Moffats and a few early guests were assembled. She very soon discovered that there is a charm about fine clothes which attracts a certain class of people and secures their respect. Several young ladies who had taken no notice of her before were very affectionate all of a sudden. Several young gentlemen who had only stared at her at the other party now not only stared, but asked to be introduced and said all manner of foolish but agreeable things to her. And several old ladies who sat on the sofas and criticized the rest of the party inquired who she was with an air of interest. She heard Mrs. Moffat reply to one of them, "Daisy March, father a colonel in the army, one of our first families, but reverses of fortune, you know, intimate friends of the Lawrences. Sweet creature, I assure you. My Ned is quite wild about her." "Dear me," said the old lady, putting up her glass for another observation of Meg, who tried to look as if she had not heard and been rather shocked at Mrs. Moffat's fibs. The queer feeling did not pass, but she imagined herself acting the new part of a fine lady, and so got on pretty well, though the tight dress gave her a side ache and the train kept getting under her feet, and she was in constant fear lest her earrings should fly off or get lost or broken. She was flirting with her fan and laughing at the feeble jokes of a young gentleman who tried to be witty, when she suddenly stopped laughing and looked confused. For just opposite she saw Laurie. He was staring at her with undisguised surprise, and disapproval also, she thought, for though he bowed and smiled, yet something in his honest eyes made her blush and wish she had her old dress on. To complete her confusion, she saw Belle nudge Annie, and both glanced from her to Laurie, who, she was happy to see, looked unusually boyish and shy. "Silly creatures to put such thoughts into my head. I won't care for it, or let it change me one bit," thought Meg, and rustled across the room to shake hands with her friend. "I'm glad you came. I was afraid you wouldn't," she said with her most grown-up air. "Joe wanted me to come and tell her how you looked, so I did," answered Laurie without turning his eyes upon her, though he half smiled at her maternal tone. "What shall you tell her?" asked Meg, full of curiosity to know his opinion of her, yet feeling ill at ease with him for the first time. "I shall say I didn't know you, for you look so grown up and unlike yourself. I'm quite afraid of you," he said, fumbling at his glove button. "How absurd of you. The girls dressed me up for fun and I rather like it." "Wouldn't Jo stare if she saw me?" said Meg, bent on making him say whether he thought her improved or not. "Yes, I think she would," returned Laurie gravely. "Don't you like me so?" asked Meg. "No, I don't," was the blunt reply. "Why not?" in an anxious tone. He glanced at her frizzled head, bare shoulders, and fantastically trimmed dress with an expression that abashed her more than his answer, which had not a particle of his usual politeness in it. "I don't like fuss and feathers." That was altogether too much from a lad younger than herself, and Meg walked away, saying petulantly, "You are the rudest boy I ever saw." Feeling very much ruffled, she went and stood at a quiet window to cool her cheeks, for the tight dress gave her an uncomfortably brilliant color. As she stood there, Major Lincoln passed by, and a minute after she heard him saying to his mother, "They are making a fool of that little girl. I wanted you to see her, but they have spoiled her entirely. She's nothing but a doll tonight." "Oh dear," sighed Meg, "I wish I had been sensible and worn my own things. Then I should have not disgusted other people or felt so uncomfortable and ashamed of myself." She leaned her forehead on the cool pane and stood half hidden by the curtains, never minding that her favorite waltz had begun, till someone touched her, and turning, she saw Laurie, looking penitent as he said with his very best bow in his hand, "Please forgive my rudeness and come and dance with me." "I'm afraid it'll be too disagreeable to you," said Meg, trying to look offended and failing entirely. "Not a bit of it. I'm dying to do it. Come, it'll be good for you. I don't like your gown, but I do think you are just splendid." And he waved his hands as if words failed to express his admiration. Meg smiled and relented and whispered as they stood waiting to catch the time, "Take care my skirt doesn't trip you up. It's the plague of my life and I was a goose to wear it." "Pin it round your neck, then it will be more useful," said Laurie, looking down at the little blue boots which he evidently approved of. Away they went, fleeting and graceful, for having practiced at home, they were well matched, and the blithe young couple were a pleasant sight to see as they twirled merrily round and round, feeling more friendly than ever after their small tiff. "Laurie, I want you to do me a favor, will you?" said Meg as he stood fanning her when her breath gave out, which it did very soon. She would not own why. "Won't I?" said Laurie with alacrity. "Please don't tell them at home about my dress tonight. They won't understand the joke and it will worry Mother." "Then why did you do it?" said Laurie's eyes so plainly that Meg hastily added, "I shall tell them myself all about it and fess to Mother how silly I've been. But I'd rather do it myself. So you'll not tell, will you?" "I give you my word I won't. Only what shall I say when they ask me? Just say I looked pretty well and was having a good time." "I'll say the first with all my heart, but how about the other? You don't look as if you're having a good time, are you?" And Laurie looked at her with an expression which made her answer in a whisper, "No, not just now. Don't think I'm horrid. I only wanted a little fun, but this sort doesn't pay. I find I'm getting tired of it." "Here comes Ned Moffat. What does he want?" said Laurie, knitting his black brows as if he did not regard his young host in the light of a pleasant addition to the party. "He put his name down for 3 dances, and I suppose he's coming for them. What a bore," said Meg, assuming a languid air which amused Laurie immensely. He did not speak to her again till supper time, when he saw her drinking champagne with Ned and his friend Fisher, who were behaving like a pair of fools, as Laurie said to himself, for he felt a brotherly sort of right to watch over the marches and fight their battles whenever a defender was needed. "You'll have a splitting headache tomorrow if you drink much of that. I wouldn't, Meg. Your mother doesn't like it, you know," he whispered, leaning over her chair, as Ned turned to refill her glass and Fisher stooped to pick up the fan. "I'm not Meg tonight. I'm a doll who does all sorts of crazy things. Tomorrow I shall put away my fuss and feathers and be desperately good again," she answered with an affected little laugh. "Wish tomorrow was here then," muttered Laurie, walking off, ill-pleased at the change he saw in her. Meg danced and flirted, chattered and giggled as the other girls did. After supper she undertook the German and blundered through it, nearly upsetting her partner with her long skirt and romping in a way that scandalized Laurie, who looked on and meditated a lecture. But he got no chance to deliver it, for Meg kept away from him till he came to say good night. "Remember," she said, trying to smile, for the splitting headache had already begun. "Silence à la mort," replied Laurie with a melodramatic flourish as he went away. And so, my friends, we are going to leave off here with Meg in a bit of a predicament. And there's something about this story that I so relate to, because how many of us have felt like we had to put on airs or put on a mask to fit in at some point, and perhaps played a role we didn't really want to play, but we thought we had to. So I really have such empathy for Meg in this chapter, and what a good friend Laurie is, right? He knows who she is, and he loves her just as she is. Not, of course, romantic love, but brotherly love. So, a really sweet chapter, and one that, I don't know, brings a lot of love into my heart for Meg, because I think we've all been there at some point. So, my beautiful ones, I wish you a good rest. And if you're still awake and you need some more companionship, you can queue up another episode, and there I will be. I love you. Thank you very much. Blessings to you.